The Midrash tells us that among commoners in the history of the world, there was no Jew ever as wealthy as Korach. And among non-Jews, the wealthiest commoner ever lived was Haman Rasha. That's how wealthy he was. You know, we say that wealth does funny things to people. We say that when the Jews left Egypt, before we left, we borrowed the personal effects from our Egyptian neighbors, the gold and silver vessels. And it's interesting that every kosher domestic species, which is domesticated, the firstborn male is naturally consecrated when it's born. It's called Bechor. Just if you have the firstborn of a male, of a child that's born in a family, it needs pidyon haben. It needs redemption with the Kohen. Identically, the first issue of a donkey, the male has to be redeemed with the sheep, and you give the sheep to the Kohen, or you decapitate it, you break its neck, one or the other. But you realize a chamor, a donkey, is a non-kosher species. Why does the chamor, the donkey, have this special value that despite the fact that it's non-kosher, its firstborn has kedusha, has the sanctity that it's naturally consecrated when it passes through the womb of its mother. So the Midrash answers that when we left Egypt, we were told to borrow the gold and silver vessels. What was the pack animal, the beast of burden? The donkey. So the promise of Hashem that after so many years of bondage, they were out with enormous wealth. That was the animal which they transported this wealth. And every Jew, when he left Egypt, left minimally with 10 pack animals laden with silver and gold. So because the Nes and the Kiddush Hashem, the fulfillment of God's promise, came through the donkey, therefore the donkey has special status, that although it's a non-kosher species, its firstborn is naturally consecrated. That's Chazal. Now, every Jew took out 10 pack animals. Korach, when he was leaving Egypt, all of a sudden, the ground opened up and he came upon the location which Yosef, who was the viceroy of Egypt, had stored a third of the wealth of the world. Because during the famine, all Egypt purchased the grain. All the surrounding countries came to purchase grain until literally he had depleted and exhausted all the currency from all the countries. So all the gold and silver came to Egypt, and Egypt was the wealthiest country in the world, one of a kind of wealth. That all the wealth of the world flowed to Egypt because of the famine. Yosef went and he divided the wealth into 3 parts, and he hid each one in another location. One location, as we were leaving Egypt, Korach came upon that location. The earth opened up, and he finds this wealth, enormous wealth, and he takes it. And the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that just the keys to the storage locations, which he hid away all this wealth, which he stored it away, he needed over 300 pack animals just to carry the keys for the locations in which he stored the wealth. That's how wealthy Korach was. Now, Korach, as we'll see in a moment, was a bad man. He was self-absorbed with himself. He believed he received the short end of the stick. He launched a mutiny against Moshe Rabbeinu. He nearly succeeded, and Hashem had to perform a miracle that the ground opened up and swallowed up him and his community. Why? But what precipitated this whole issue that a man as wealthy as he was, with a pedigree that he had, which was the same pedigree as Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was a wise man. When you have that kind of wealth, you very easily influence people. People are enamored and mesmerized by who you are because you're one of a kind. Nobody has ever achieved this level of status. I mean, why did Hashem allow him or gift him with this kind of wealth? Firstly, the wealth was basically the basis for his mutiny and his destruction, and himself and all the community, his whole community were destroyed. Men, women, and children. But nevertheless, it happened. Why? I will discuss in a moment why, what was the cause of it? Why was Korach envious of? What was Korach's claim against Moshe Rabbeinu? When we'll see in a moment, he claimed that the word of Moshe is not the word of Hashem. That was his point. The Moshe Rabbeinu, what he does and what he says, although it seems to be he's God's spokesman, but a lot of the things he says is really, it's not the word of Hashem. It's only to further his own power and cause. It's all nepotism. Proof of the pudding is he chose his brother to be the Kohen Gadol. His brother's children are the assistant Kohanim Gedoms, high priests. It's a family affair. And therefore, we're all being left out, although we are as qualified, and we're talking about the Bechorim, who are the officiants before the Chet Egel? The Bechorim. So Moshe claimed that these people were disenfranchised because of the Chet Egel. But they all, as we'll see what they said, Kulanu Kadoshim. We all who heard at Sinai, Nasa V'Nishma. When we said Nasa V'Nishma, we heard the Aseres HaDibros directly from the mouth of Hashem, and we all prophesied in a wake state. So evidently, if we all prophesied in a wake state, evidently we're all special. And if we're all special, why is Moshe Rabbeinu the one to make choices? And he chose his brother and his children. The Kohanim, Kulbana Kedoshim, we're all holy, and we should be able to be the officiants. The Bechor should be able to be the officiant. That's his claim. And that was the basis to say that Moshe Rabbeinu was not authentic, that his word was not the word of Hashem. That's where Korach began. But what was the real story? What was the real story? We'd read 2 weeks ago, that the Leviim were initiated to take the place of the Bechorim. There were 22,000 Leviim, and they went and they had to have all the hair shaved off their body. They had to be waved, like literally like a korban, like a sheep, like the goat. You wave it, and you shear off all its hair. So Rashi over there says why, and maybe in a Midrash, because just as a Metzora, when he re-enters into the camp, he has to shave off all the hair off his body. That is the purification. So since the Leviim are taking the place of the Bechorim, and the reason why they were disenfranchised, which was called the Chet of Egel, the sin of the golden calf, which was idolatry, that was the initiation. They had to have their hair shaved off the body. The beards, their eyebrows, all the hair off the body. Korach comes home, we had mentioned this, and he walks through the front door. And we're talking the man, he's the wealthiest Jew with this special pedigree. And his wife says to him, who are you? He says, I'm your husband, Korach. He says, what happened? And he explains to her what happened. That this is the initiation process for the Leviim to take the place of the Bechorim. We are the officiants to assist the Kohanim in their service. So his wife says to him, don't you understand? You know better than a heap of dung. They take you like an animal. They share you like you share a sheep. They wave you like an animal to be brought as a sacrifice. All the Jews put their hands on you, like one puts his hands on a korban, and you feel that you're a privileged class when they treat you like an animal. Don't you understand what kind of fool you are? This is what his wife said to him. Those words actually rattled him, and they touched him in a way that he started to reflect on what his wife said. She's right. I'm a fool. Here I have this wealth, I have this pedigree. And the last, what really threw him off the cliff, the third appointmentship that was given, Moshe Rabbeinu was the king. His brother was the Kohen Gadol, and his brothers were the Kohanim. There was a third appointmentship which was given out, and was given to the brother, the son of the brother of the youngest of the brothers of Levi. Levi had 4 children. Kos had 4 children, and Yitzhar was the second, and Uziel was the 4th. Elitzovim Uziel was chosen to be the Nasi of the Levium, of the family. He says, so Korach said, if we're going according to the laws of inheritance, the Bechor receives 2 portions. So Moshe received we'll see Rashi in a moment, kingship. His brother received to be the Kohen. Who should receive the third appointmentship? Myself, because I'm the son of the second brother. He skipped over me and wanted the youngest. There clearly, the distribution of power is not based on the laws of inheritance. But what is it? It's Moshe's choosing. He picks and chooses as he chooses. It's clear this has nothing to do with God, because it would be the word of Hashem. I should have received the third appointmentship. Because if it wasn't the laws of inheritance, I am more qualified than Aaron, and Moshe, I should be the leader. Moshe is not the leader. I should be the leader. I have leadership qualities. I have all what it takes to be, all the trappings of leadership. I should be the one. As a result of this was the basis for his mutiny and gathering all the people to go against Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the backdrop on this. So the obvious question is, this was the most serious affront to Moshe Rabbeinu. At Sinai, what happened at Sinai? That Moshe Rabbeinu God openly spoke to him in the presence of all the Jews, and all the Jews openly prophesied. What was the reason for this? That they should all witness in a wake state, that firstly, that a human being is able to receive prophecy, a communication when they're awake, with their physical faculties. In addition, that God is openly speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is his spokesman. And it says over there, what was the value of this? That the Jews forever should believe that you are my spokesman. Even later when you speak in my name, because they're saying, now I've chosen to be my spokesman, they should believe without question that you are my spokesman. Your word is my word. The word of Moshe is the word of Hashem. Korach now is putting that all into question. That Torah is not the word of Hashem. The moment the word Torah is not the word of Hashem, this is the end of Torah. This is the end of Judaism, because Judaism is the word of Hashem. But if he's creating this question, it may not be. This affront, this mutiny will undermine and destroy whatever happened at Sinai. The only reason why he was able to launch this mutiny was only because of this wealth. If he wouldn't have this wealth, people wouldn't have looked at him. But because he had this enormous wealth and this status, together with his pedigree, therefore he was able to convince and actually to speak to the people in a way they were enthralled with him. But why did Hashem give it to him? This was the basis for his attack against Moshe Rabbeinu. So we had said in the past, the authenticity of Torah had to be established at a level that it's irrefutable because of what happened at Sinai. Korach came to cast doubt of the Sinai event. What happened at Sinai doesn't prove what Moshe claims it proved. What was the end of the story? Korach was swallowed up with his community by the ground. And it was clearly the hand of Hashem that Korach, the basis for his claim had no basis. And the Gemara tells us above Basra that he was an Amora. He was traveling in the desert and he met an Arab. And the Arab was traveling on his steed and he had a spear. And he says to the great rabbi, he says, I want to show you something very unusual in the desert. There's a certain fissure in the ground, and there's smoke coming out of that fissure. And he took a fleece of a sheep and put it at the edge of the tip of the spear, and he put it into the fissure, and it becomes singed. The heat was so hot, the wool became singed. And he says to the Amora, if you put your ear to the ground, you hear something unusual. I'm not sure what it means, but you hear something unusual. So he puts his ear to the ground and he hears a chorus, in unison, people saying, Moshe emes, v'Torah emes. Moshe is truthful, his Torah is truthful, v'anachnu badoim, and we are liars. And this is Korach v'adoso, Korach and his community in Gehenna. This is what they're chanting continuously. Moshe emes, v'Torah emes, v'anachnu badoim. This had to happen because eventually it was inevitable somebody would come to this point and question the authenticity of Torah. Maybe Moshe is not what you think he was. Maybe he somehow pulled the wool over your eyes, even though there's Sinai. Hashem gives this enormous wealth, one of a kind of wealth in the history of existence, the Korach, that he's in a position, due to his pedigree and his personality, his charisma, that he could challenge Moshe. But at the end of the day, and part of that challenge was based on the dimension of wealth he had. But at the end of the day, he's going to be destroyed. And it's worthwhile to give him all that wealth to bring this about, to put this question at rest forever. And the conclusion is Moshe emes v'Torah emes. That's the reason why Hashem allowed him to come upon this wealth when he left Egypt, which was one kind of wealth, which was a third of the wealth of the world that Yosef had actually stored away. Vayikach Korach, the gematria b'mekach Korach. This is a bad deal. It was a bad deal. Zeb mekach b'mekach Korach. Then he quotes a pasuk in Koheles, which Shlomo says, "Osher shomer lebalov l'roso." Wealth is kept for its owner to his detriment. Wealth could be the most extreme detriment of a person, could destroy him. What is the gematria of Osher shomer lebalov l'roso? The gematria lo-oshro shel Korach l'roso hoya. The wealth of Korach was the basis, was a detriment to Korach. That was the basis. If he wouldn't have the wealth, he would have, even it wouldn't have entered his mind to actually to see this in the light that he did. But if I am this and I have this and God gave me this, evidently I'm not an ordinary person. Therefore, I have a right to make a claim. I once said, the Gemara tells us in Yuma that after 120 years, Hillel mechayves haniyim. Hillel will be the prosecution for the poor. What does this mean? And Rebbe Elazar ben Aruch, who was one of the great students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, will be the basis for prosecution for the wealthy. And Yosef Atzadik will be the basis of prosecution for people who have exceptional levels of beauty. What does this mean? After 120 years, Hashem says to a person, Kavati to Torah, did you study Torah sufficiently? Set times. He says, I was so impoverished. I barely could eke out a living. I had no time to study. So Hashem says to this person, were you poorer than Hillel? Okay. Were you poorer than Hillel? Hillel was originally a Babylonian. And Hillel was a student of Shmai and Avtalio. They were the leading Torah sages in Bovel. And in those days, that if you wanted to study Torah and you had to come to the Beis Medrash, you had to pay an entry fee. And if you couldn't afford the entry fee, they didn't let you into the Beis Medrash. They didn't let you into the public lecture. Hillel was a very poor man. How did he earn a living? He was a woodcutter. Every day, he would go cut something which is less than 2 pennies of wood. 1 coin he would give to his wife to support the family for the day. And the other coin he would use for the entry, pay the entry fee. And he was able to hear the public lecture of Shema Italian every day. One day, Hillel only earned one coin, didn't earn 2 coins. So he took the coin, gave it to his wife to support the family. But what do you do when they don't let you into the beis medrash, to the shir? He went to the roof, and there was a skylight on the roof of the beis medrash. And he put his ear to the roof to be able to hear the lecture of Shmaya and Naftalion, who were his rabbeim. And as he was immersed in listening to the shir, it snowed, and he was covered with snow. And he went into hypothermia. The next morning, it was a sunny day, Shmaya Italian, it's Shabbos morning, and it seems peculiar. The skylight, usually the sun shines through the skylight, illuminates the beis medrash. It was Shabbos, so there was no fire any longer illuminating the beis medrash. So the sun would illuminate, and they realized it's like overcast. They look up at the skylight and they see the form of a human being. So they realize somebody must be lying there unconscious. They went to the roof. They took away 4 feet of snow. He was covered with 4 feet of snow, and they made a fire on Shabbos to warm him because it was pikuach nefesh, and Hillel was revived. And all this came about because of his impoverished state that he couldn't afford the entry fee into the beis medrash. So they're going to say to the poor man, after 120 years, why didn't you study? He said, because I was so poor, I had no time to study. He said, were you poorer than Hillel? Hillel, despite that, he left no stone unturned, and he learned Torah. So what's your excuse? So Hillel is the basis for the prosecution of the poor. So just a simple understanding. I mean, after 20 years, Hashem wants us to be Hillel. Okay, the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that Hillel was so humble that if the Torah wouldn't have been given through Moshe Rabbeinu, it could have been given through Hillel. Okay, that's how special he was. So this is a claim against us. Why aren't you like Hillel? It doesn't mean that. It means that despite your financial situation, if you value Torah sufficiently, somehow you could find some time to study. To say you have no time, that's impossible. If you value it sufficiently, somehow you find some time. That's the Gemara. So I asked the question, Hillel every day would earn 2 coins, one for his wife, one for the entry fee to the beis medrash. And every day he'd be busy cutting wood to earn this money. On Sunday, he should go and cut enough wood, let's say for a few days, sell it, and have enough money that he doesn't have to chop wood Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and he has enough money gives to his wife and pay the entry fee. Why every day he went and he cut wood for the most minimum amount of money, the bare subsistence for his wife and the entry fee? He should have had a few coins in his pocket that the other days he does not be distracted with cutting wood. Why did Hillel do this? This is the question I asked. People who work for companies, they're always waiting for they don't work for the salary. They're waiting for the bonus. The bonus very often is multiple times the salary. Salary, you can't afford that house necessarily in the Hamptons. All of a sudden you get a bonus to say to your wife, I think now finally we can afford that summer home. So the wife says, but what about the mortgage? So, I have enough. We put down the mortgage to buy that house. We're able to now live at another level because of that. If he wouldn't have received the bonus, it never entered his mind that they're going to have a summer home. He lived more simply. It's only when he had those few extra coins in his pocket, all of a sudden new horizons open. Until now, it never entered mind we're able to afford something else. Now that we're able to afford, all of a sudden something else comes into mind. Hillel never wanted, ever, that anything other than Torah should be in his mind. You earn exactly to what? To exist, to be able to, it's only to facilitate the setting to be able to study Torah. A coin for my wife, a coin for the entry fee. The moment you have that extra coin, it's true, Monday, I'll use it on Monday. No, but if you have those extra few coins on Sunday, all of a sudden those extra few coins are something available to use it for something else. Hillel never wanted to put himself in that position. It's always at the bare minimum, so you should never be tempted, or all of a sudden new things come to mind, that now he's entitled to something else. You know, you can't feel entitlement if you don't have the ability to be entitled. But if you have those extra few coins, all of a sudden you become part of entitled, you take on entitled status. Hillel never wanted to go there. Korach, being the wealthiest Khan who ever lived, he felt he had entitlement, which was one of a kind. He had pedigree, he had wealth, he had charisma, and it says Chochem Hoya, he was wise. But his ego tripped him up really badly. That entitlement totally subsumed him. But what was the value of that? Because at the end of the day, he and his community would be destroyed to confirm Moshe Emes, Toroso Emes, that regardless of your status and everything you have, it's going to be swallowed up in the ground forever, never ever again to be seen. To confirm this point. Okay, the first posuk. V'yigach Korach ben Yitzor ben Kos ben Levi. Korach, the son of Yitzor, the son of Kos, the son of Levi. V'dosam v'aviram b'nei Eliyav. Dosan v'aviram were the children of Eliyav. V'on bepelis b'nei Ruvain. So they were the children of the Ruvain is the Bechor. So Dosan v'aviram has made trouble from day one. From the moment that Moshe Rabbeinu walked out of the palace and he killed the Egyptians, they informed the Moshe Rabbeinu. Dosan v'aviram. He had to flee from Egypt and only returned when he was 80 years old. And every incident which was a problem, Dosan v'aviram were involved. What precipitated Lomer Yisrael Lomer Shlachtoni? That Moshe Rabbeinu spoke out of turn was because of the comment that Dosan v'aviram had made to him. You've putrefied us in the eyes of Paro. Since you've come, things have gotten worse. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, who left over the mun? They weren't supposed to gather mun on Shabbos. Who went out to the field to see if there was a mun? Dosan v'aviram. They were continuously a problem. Now they feel they have their chance to really topple Moshe. They joined forces with Korach to be able to destroy Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the group that are mutinying against Moshe Rabbeinu. The Yikach Korach by Kos ben Levi and Dosan v'aviram. So the reason why Korach had such power and such power of persuasion because of his wealth and because of his pedigree as a Levi. But what about Dosan v'aviram? Their power came from the pedigree because they were the Bechorim. They were the children of the firstborn of Yaakov Avinu. And they wielded that, they flexed that muscle continuously. Why over here were they so enraged? Well, maybe you'd say, well, it was an ego trip. Or initially, when Moshe killed the Egyptian, what did they say to Moshe? Since when are you a judge? Because when one of them lifted his hand to strike the other one, he said, Evil one, why are you striking your fellow? He reprimanded them. And because he reprimanded them, he says, are you a judge? Do you mean you're going to kill us also like you killed the Egyptian? So he knew right away that it was known and they informed on it. But what was actually really eating them? That this young man, he's a prince, he's the adopted son of Paro, and look at the power, look at his arrogance. With the Bechorim, with the children of the Bechor of Yaakov, and they were of the wealthy class in Egypt, therefore they felt that Moshe had no right to surpass them in prestige and honor. They couldn't swallow it. Now they feel they're able to destroy Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why they got on the bandwagon there. But really, what really enraged them? What was the consequence of the Chet Egel, of the Chet Meraglim? The consequence of Chet Meraglim, for them, there was no worse moment in their life than the Chet Meraglim. Why? Why, after Moshe Rabbeinu, after being away 80 years, Hashem says, you go back, not 80 years, 60 years. He came back when he's 80 years old. You go back because the people informed on you are no longer alive. Who are the ones who informed on him? Doesn't have Viram. So Umar asks, what do you mean they're no longer alive? They're very much alive. So Umar says, initially, the only reason why they were able to inform on him, because they have that exceptional level of wealth, was even among the slave class of Jews, they were wealthy Jews, and they had certain relationships in the government, and they were able to inform because that connection to the upper echelons of the Egyptian government. Once they lost their wealth, their words, they didn't have those relationships any longer. Therefore, they couldn't inform on him. And that's what Hashem said to Moshe, Mesu Anoshim. Those people died. Do you know what it means? A man who was wealthy, and he flaunted the wealth, and he flexed his muscle between pedigree and wealth. You know what this means? That's everything. That's your glory. They lost that glory. And today, they were history. They were of the past. I asked the question, 80% of the Jews died during the days of darkness. Das Navir evidently didn't die during days of darkness. They made it out. Why did they make it out? I mean, they were evil people. They should have died during the days of darkness. It's an obvious question. Why didn't they? The ones who died during the day of darkness, why did they die? It says because they were Rishonim. In what sense were they Rishonim? They were all idolaters. Rishonim is because they didn't have sufficient faith in God, trust. How do we go into a desert without provisions? You have to have a degree of faith. Doesn't Aviram felt somehow they're going to make it? Hashem will take care of them. Their issue was Moshe Rabbeinu. It wasn't God himself. Moshe Rabbeinu, they couldn't accept him to be the leader. And his word was the word of Hashem. They couldn't accept that. They were waiting for the moment. Here they're leaving Egypt with tremendous wealth. If we go into the promised land with this level of wealth, we go straight back to the top. We're going to have our past glory. What happened when the Chet Meraglim happened? And it was decreed they should all die. You have all this gold and all the silver, all this wealth. What do you do with it? It's worthless. It's like discontinued currency. It's worthless. They felt Moshe Rabbeinu pulled the wool over their eyes, duped them. Here, we only left Egypt for what reason? For glory. Glory is power and prestige. And that's the wealth. So if we'd be in Canaan, we'd be back on top. Now that it's been decreed we all die, we're all going to the grave. They were livid against Moshe Rabbeinu. And in terms of this mutiny, they were even more vocal than Korach was against Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, who joins Korach in this mutiny? Korach was also his prestige. He felt he was passed over. They couldn't swallow this because here they believed we only left because, and now that because has no relevance any longer, therefore they'll do whatever they can to destroy Moshe Rabbeinu for that reason.